I think I'd like to start, maybe more than 200 years ago. There's a lot of discussion, we often hear it here on the floor and in the rhetoric across the nation, that the Founding Fathers would do it this way or that way, and if we only listened to the Founding Fathers, most of our problems would be resolved. Usually, those discussions really speak to not doing something. Turns out that the Founding Fathers really did have a great deal of wisdom. I came across a book written by Mr. Tom Hartman called The American Dream. And in it, in his very first chapter, he goes back to the Founding Fathers. And he talks about what George Washington and George Washington's Secretary of Treasury actually did. On the day he was inaugurated, Mr. Washington said he did not want to wear a suit made in England. He wanted to wear something made in America. Well, the Make It in America is one of the principal things that my colleagues and I on the Democratic side have been talking about for some time. So when I came across this book, I said, wow, this is interesting. George Washington instructed his Secretary of Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, to develop a manufacturing program for the United States. And Alexander Hamilton did that. He didn't do it in 2,000 or 3,000 pages as we might do it today. He did it in just a short, maybe 20 or 30 pages. And he developed an 11-point plan for America's manufacturers. Turns out that many of those 11 points are what we have been proposing on the Democratic side here for our Make It in America agenda. But tonight I wanted to pick up one of those 11 points. And it happens to be the 11th of the 11 points that Alexander Hamilton presented to George Washington in 1790, and it was on American manufacturers. So, point number 11, facilitating of the transportation of commodities. The language is rather ancient English, but it still speaks to the following. Improvements favoring this objective intimately concern all domestic interests of a community, but they may, without impropriety, be mentioned as having an important relationship to manufacturers. There is perhaps scarcely anything which has been calculated to assist the manufacturers of Great Britain than the meritorious public roads of that kingdom and the great progress which has been of late made in opening canals. Of the former, the United States stands much in need. He goes on to talk about the necessity for transportation here and copying what had gone on in Great Britain, that is, the development of public roads. And he says, the following remarks are sufficiently judicious and pertinent to deserve a literal quotation. And then quotation. Good roads, canals, and navigable rivers, by diminishing the expense of carriage, put the remote parts of a country more nearly upon the level with those in the neighborhood of a town. They are, upon that account, the greatest of all improvements. So, here we are in Mr. Hartman's book, Rebooting the American Dream, talking about what the Founding Fathers wanted to do in 1790. I would also point out that by 1792, nearly all of those 11 points had become law and laid the foundation for the great American Industrial Revolution. So, back to infrastructure, the word we use today. We use infrastructure when we talk about our highways, our canals, our roads, and our transportation systems. There were, in fact, some public transportation systems at that time. Now, speaking specifically of roads and jobs, we often talk about jobs here. We need to understand that today, if we were to pass the Senate version of the Highway Transportation